Hello, today I'm looking at Majjhima number 88, which is entitled the Bahitika Sutta, which is translated as the cloak or the robe. Now the location is Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's Park, and the main folk involved are King Pasenadi of Kosala and the Venerable Ananda, along with Buddha. So this sutta starts with quite a long introduction of Ananda at his daily abiding, and King Pasenadi, who's out with his retinue of elephants and so on and so forth, happens to see Ananda in the distance, and he asks his emissary to go and ask Ananda if he's willing to meet with the king, and if so, could he meet with the king down by the river. So the emissary goes and meets with Ananda. Ananda says yes, he would be more than happy to meet with the king. So he goes off to the rendezvous, and then King Pasenadi follows on his elephants and then has to dismount his elephant because the trail gets too narrow, and then meets up with Ananda. And the question he asks of Ananda is, would the Blessed One, that is Buddha, behave with the body in such a way that he could be censured by wise recluses and Brahmins? So it sort of begs the question, why all this sort of subterfuge, secrecy, why not ask Buddha directly, and so on and so forth. So the footnotes of the translation that I use by Bhikkhus Nanamoli Bodhi, there's a footnote directing me to, or directing the reader to a part of the Pali Canon called the Nikaya, and within that there are the Udanas. And in Udana 4, number 8, there's one called the Sundari Sutta. Now the Sundari Sutta says that this is set in the same place as Majjhima number 88, that is around Jeta's Grove, where Buddha resided. Now Buddha at this time was a man who was honoured and revered, but this was much to the dismay and disgruntlement of the followers of other sects. So those other wanderers went to a fellow female wanderer called Sundari and asked her to frequent Jeta's Grove. And once she had been seen by many people frequenting Jeta's Grove, she was then murdered and buried at the grove. Now these murderers then went to King Pasenadi, who's the one in Majjhima 988, and said to him that the wanderer Sundara had disappeared. And at their suggestion, the king said they should probably look where Sundara was most often seen, which was Jeta's Grove. And there they found the body of Sundari. So they took the body and paraded it through the streets and crossroads of the local town, Savatthi, telling people that the death must be at the handiwork and at the hands of Buddha's followers, which resulted in abuse of Buddha's followers when they went to town, Savatthi, on alms round. And the followers called by the locals a bunch of hypocrites and other things. So that's basically saying, excuse me, the town of Savatthi at the time was in ferment. So it looks like, the sutta in the Udanas continues, but it would suggest if this is at the time of Ananda's meeting with Pasenadi, that there was trouble afoot. So I'll go back now to the text of Majjhima number 88 and pick up where I left off, which was King Pasenadi asking Ananda, would the Blessed One, Buddha, behave with the body in such a way that he could be censured by the wise recluses and Brahmins? No, he would not, Ananda replied. And Pasenadi repeats the question, but this time about Buddha's speech. And again, Ananda replies, no, he would not. And with Buddha's mind, no, he would not, Ananda replied. So King Pasenadi then congratulates Ananda on giving a straight answer, which he would not get from foolish, ignorant persons and those who had not investigated and evaluated, but he was valuable in the praise and blame spoken by wise people who have investigated. So again, that fits with that previous story that King Pasenadi would appear to be getting grief about this difference between the sects and probably looking for the other sects to exile Buddha and his followers. And then there's a sort of a catechism where the king asks questions of Ananda, to which Ananda responds. So the first question is, Ananda, what sort of a bodily behaviour is censured by wise recluses and Brahmins? Unwholesome bodily behaviour, O great king. And what is unwholesome? Any bodily behaviour that is blameworthy, great king. And what kind of bodily behaviour is blameworthy? Any bodily behaviour that brings affliction, great king. And what kind of bodily behaviour brings affliction? Any bodily behaviour that has painful results, O great king. And what kind of bodily behaviour has painful results? Any bodily behaviour, great king, that leads to one's own affliction, or to the affliction of others, or to the affliction of both, and results in any increase in unwholesome states and a decrease in wholesome states. King Pasenadi is so pleased, Mr. Page, sorry. The questions and answers session between King Pasenadi and Ananda is then repeated, except instead of being for bodily behaviour, it's for verbal behaviour. And then the whole thing is repeated again, but instead of verbal behaviour, it's about mental behaviour. And then the questions from King Pasenadi go on to, does the Blessed One praise only the abandoning of unwholesome states? Ananda replies that the Blessed One, Buddha, has abandoned all unwholesome states and only has wholesome states. So to my mind, that's not really a direct answer to King Pasenadi's question. Does the Blessed One praise only the abandoning of unwholesome states? But if the question is taken into context with Sundari's disappearance and murder, Ananda is basically saying, and I repeat his reply to the king, Buddha has abandoned all unwholesome states and only has wholesome states. Therefore, i.e., subtext, he's not involved with Sundari's disappearance and murder. So there then follows another question and answer session between King Pasenadi and Ananda, this time on the positive traits rather than the negative traits, as follows. So King Pasenadi asks, what kind of bodily behaviour is uncensored by wise recluses and Brahmins? Any bodily behaviour that is wholesome, great king. And what kind of bodily behaviour is wholesome? Any bodily behaviour that is blameless, O great king. And what kind of bodily behaviour is blameless? Any bodily behaviour that does not bring affliction, great king. And what kind of bodily behaviour does not bring affliction. Any bodily behaviour that has pleasant results, great king. And what kind of bodily behaviour has pleasant results? Any bodily behaviour that does not lead to one's own affliction, or to the affliction of others, or to the affliction of both, and on account of which unwholesome states diminish and wholesome states increase. Now again, the question and answer session then repeats, instead of bodily behaviour for verbal behaviour, and then for mental behaviour instead of verbal behaviour. So it goes through the three behaviours: the bodily behaviour, the verbal behaviour, and the mental behaviour. And this again ends with King Pasenadi asking, does the Blessed One, Buddha, praise only the undertaking of all wholesome states? And again, Ananda replies, the Blessed One has abandoned all unwholesome states and possesses wholesome states. King Pasenadi is so pleased with the answer that he offers Ananda great treasures. So I've just put in the note here that King Pasenadi really has had Buddha's innocence affirmed by Ananda, despite the townsfolk with their mumblings and whatever against Buddha. So, yes, Pasenadi is so pleased that he offers Ananda great treasures, which of course Ananda refuses, but also realizing that Ananda, as a bhikkhu or monk, cannot accept the treasures, he offers Ananda a magnificent robe, as King Pasenadi knows monks can have robes. But again, Ananda refuses, saying his triple robe he has at the moment is already complete. So King Pasenadi suggests Ananda give away his current robe and accept this new magnificent robe. So at this suggestion, Ananda accepted the robe, which in fact had been a gift to King Pasenadi from King Ajatasattu of Mayada. After they parted, Ananda went to Buddha and related the whole incident to Buddha. And Buddha replied to the assembled monks, it is a great gain for King Pasenadi of Kosala that he has had the opportunity of seeing and paying respects to Ananda. And this is what the Blessed One said, and the bhikkhus were satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. And that's the end of Majjhima number 88, which is called the Bahitika Sutta. So, thanks for watching.